Okay, you guys are all set.
Excellent. All right, well, I have two announcements to make before we get started. The first is that I have a hard stop at 7:30, so I'll be dropping if we're still going after that, which I hope we're not. And the second is that I hereby cede chairmanship back to Mr. Winter now that he is delightfully back with us, and he is far better qualified than I. And Matt, knock yourself out. You're now chairman.
I'll second that motion.
All right, so I think that this chairmanship is
Mark, he's already asleep on the job.
Yeah, really.
It's easy. Yeah, sorry, I can't set up. I'm going in for surgery in 2 weeks.
No
So
way,
I'm
really?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
I herniated a disc, L4, L5.
Oh man.
I'm sorry,
that.
that stinks.
Matt, I've had that surgery twice.
Really?
L4, L5 surgery twice.
Oh,
And I don't know if you're having a neurosurgeon or I can't remember the other term, but it was instantly successful. So I hope you have the same results, because it was all the pain down my leg was gone the instant surgery was over. It took a while to fully recover both times, but it was very successful surgery. So good luck to you, I swear.
All right, great. Well, it's not, I suppose now, since we're recording, everybody knows.
I apologize for poking fun. I'm sorry, right?
Yeah.
Come back to bite me.
All right. So anyways, the chairmanship for this meeting is simply to turn it over to Glenn. So Glenn, you're up.
all right, well, first you need to approve the minutes from December.
Oh, geez, I'm out of practice. All right. So let me go to the agenda. And so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:05, even though we've been on it for a couple of minutes. And we've got the full subcommittee here, myself and Karen and Mark and Adam, with Donna supporting us as usual, and our consultant Glenn. And the agenda item 3A is the approval of the special meeting minutes of December 2nd, 2021. I would look for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Or I'll second that motion.
And any discussion? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 That's all four of us. The motion carries. And then new business agenda item 4A, the review of booklet number 6. And then I'm going to combine this with agenda item 4B, review of booklet number 7. I think, Glenn, we can go right from 6 to 7 if we want, once we get there.
Yep. So I'll follow the commission's lead about how far you want to go here tonight. The two booklets together are 40-something pages. There's quite a bit of material in here. And so if we don't get through things tonight, we can't carry it forward. If we can, that's pretty awesome, because there's other parts of the plan that we can pick up on. So in organizing topics in the plan for discussion, broke down sort of the thematic elements simply for our discussion purposes into 3 booklets: conservation, development, and infrastructure. Tonight is to talk about development. We did add the concept of sustainability and resiliency in a separate book. We talked about that with the conservation book. So development related strategies isn't really always about development, but it's things that are associated with physical development, economic development, social development, et cetera. And this booklet covered sort of 4 main topics: the village center, business and economic development in town in general, residential development, and housing needs. So I think we'll kind of start with that. I have the booklet, and I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay with everybody. And go right to page number 2 in the booklet. So, I mean, I think Kent Center in so many respects is the heart and soul of the community. When you talk to people about Kent, very often the first thing that they think of is places like the village center, which is iconic. There are other places in town, the Housatonic River, Kent Falls, et cetera, but really the village center just seems to create warm and fuzzy feelings in everybody's heart. And so I think what I wanted to try to do was to have us think about the village center in its long-term economic health and how we can continue to keep it as a vibrant and successful community. So I put together this information based on work that the town has done historically on the village center and some possible strategy ideas. So page 2 of the booklet is just really an overview of the village center, its overall character, the things that kind of make it special in people's minds. The fact that it's so important for Kent that we established the Kent Village Overlay District to give us overview of design activities which occur in the village center. And also historically, there've been a number of studies and things that have touched on the village center in sort of different ways, shapes, or forms. And I wanted to recognize those as part of this booklet. First of which, bottom of page 3, is the streetscape plan, which is currently slated, I think, to get going and be completed. I think in the not too distant future. Is that a
May.
fair assessment of where it's at?
May, it'll start in May.
Okay.
They,
And I think,
they're just sending out the bid packets. I think the bid packets are going out February 1st and they have to have them back by the 20 or the responses to them
yep,
by the 28th. And then they are expecting shovel in the ground May.
that's pretty awesome. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Also
really
looking back, we have the 1998 Route 7 Scenic Corridor Master Plan. This was a study done by the state, but it really led to the designation of Route 7 on the Route 7 corridor as a state scenic route. But it also talked about Kent's Village Center and made some observations about ways that the village center could be strengthened and enhanced over time. So this drawing is old enough in terms of discussions and activities. It didn't make it big enough that it becomes kind of a focus of the plan, but it does provide information in terms of infill buildings, the possible establishment of a town green, and some other things like that. Also included information from the incentive housing study, where we looked at opportunities for housing development, both in what we call the mixed use area. And now we have the mixed use overlay zone in the village center, and also the field area, which I think is the incentive housing overlay zone. So those were both important and relevant to the village center.
You didn't, when we did the incentive housing zone, didn't we also identify the parcel behind the Fife?
Not specifically, Donna. I think our activity was really focused on the east side of Route 7. That's my recollection, but I think we're going to get to that.
It
You think
was
it was,
focused
Matt?
on that, but if I remember correctly, we weren't allowed to, the whole incentive zone was done based on that field that you have in the drawing, but we had to discuss it about other places because otherwise it was spot zoning.
Right,
So
we
I
had to,
do-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, so I do remember talking about that area that's behind the Fife as another possible area that the incentive housing zone could go.
Yeah.
I remember it was an issue. We couldn't just do it for that area.
I thought in order to get the grant, you had to identify 2, and the second one was the Johnson Road project. But I know we not settled, but concentrated on the ones that are in the book. But I thought I remember that there were 2.
Well, I think that's why this conversation, I think, is important, because I think as we get a little bit further into the booklet, I think the concept of housing in and near the village center is one which is potentially important for the village center. And we can identify that area as a possible future housing area to support the town center.
Okay.
The
I think
next-
that's going to be an important conversation. I remember the incentive housing zone. I remember there's some aspect of portability to it, which is somewhat what Adam and Don are talking about. But as far as housing goes, and the the support of housing within the village center, I think that's an important conversation in light of what we just went through in the VR2
Yep.
district and the subdivision, right? So I'm curious about whether the town and the people in town are going to be more interested in preserving the open space within the town, such as this parcel here and the parcel over on Johnson Road that Donna was talking about, or are they going to be more interested in providing location for housing in the future?
I think that is important because I think, I'm just going to jump ahead for a couple of pages here, so we'll come back in a moment. But I felt that what we really, I'm going to reduce this in size too. I think it was important as part of our planning effort here to start thinking about the village center holistically. So I wanted to create two maps that, based on aerial photographs, that we could use to talk about situations like this. So, for example, there was this whole conversation in the current POCD about the gateways and quote, the northern gateway to the village, but it wasn't really mapped and described as to what that was and where it was. So I think the value here from a map can be to help people visualize what's around the village center and how these items tie to each other. So here, for example, I think there's really kind of, my sense is as a visitor to Kent, but there's really two levels of gateways. What I call the outer gateway. This is where I start to get a sense or a taste that I'm entering someplace. I'm anticipating what's to come. I'm kind of excited about it. And then what I would call the inner gateways, which is really the places now that you feel like you've passed into what is the village center or the village core area. And so we could, if we wanted to, kind of use these as benchmarks to think about the village center and get our terminology straight when we talk about different things. The other thing that this map shows is the opportunity for pedestrian river walks or overlooks or connections to Emery Park or South Kent Road, but other ways to extend out from the village center to make it more attractive for visitors or provide pedestrian and bicycle connections, et cetera. So this map here is something that I created. It's for discussion purposes to kind of give a sense of what we're thinking about for this village core area at kind of a macro scale. And then the companion map. Now this map is on page 8 of the booklet. Companion map, which is on page 9, now starts to focus in a little bit more on the village center area and picks up a couple of things I think which could be important for the village center. So this black and white outline here, which looks like a cross, is the streetscape improvement area. I think that the possible future development opportunities which occur on the east side, the field area near town hall, et cetera, is important. Right now, there's only one entrance in, which is really off of Kent Green Boulevard. And I guess, yes, there is the driveway which occurs further north, which leads into the IGA. But for anybody really coming into town now from 341 or South Kent Road, they have to get all the way around to the monument on Route 7, turn north and get in. So the concept of some connectivity in this section of the town center might be something to recommend. I think what this note here says on the bottom right is I've shown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible connections. And I'm not serious about 5 connections to the village center, but I would suggest to you guys that it could be advantageous to have 2 or maybe 3, even 1 would be wonderful. But to start thinking about this type of connectivity in other types of situations. Now, the note up here I put for streetscape improvement area, I was looking at this parcel, which is what I think you were talking about, the parcel behind the Fife. And I think that is on Johnson. I think that is a potential housing opportunity area for consideration. And it would fill in and complement much of what's going on in the village center already and create some additional opportunities. So I think that these are meant to be ideas for thinking and talking. And then if the commission's comfortable, we could include these in the POCD as not necessarily plans, but illustrations of things that we might want to consider or encourage in the future. So the current plan really kind of doesn't have this. So I want you to kind of think about that as being a possibility. And these two maps are really kind of in the circumstances, we might say that a picture could be worth 1,000 words. And we can use it that way. In addition, going back in the booklet now to the pages that we skipped, pages 6 and 7 have some possible village center principles and concepts and things for us to think about for the village center. Gateways and approaches, wayfinding, continuing to focus in on architectural and site design with the overlay district, taking a look at permitted uses, vehicular circulation, pedestrian circulation, parking, utilities, trying to get overhead wires underground, et cetera. And then the possibility of ways to promote compatible development. So my thought process for your consideration is to recognize that the village center is a pretty key part of Kent. And that rather than just kind of let things happen in accordance with current zoning and maybe even be surprised that some of the things that might be proposed, we could actually be a little bit more proactive in the POCD if you're comfortable to talk about the important elements of the village, some of our principles and concepts, and then some maps that might illustrate that. We do have a conversation here about electrical vehicle charging stations and then some recommendations in here for possible action steps, regulation changes, and some other things. So at a macro level, how detailed would you like to be about the village center? Is this using a Three Bears analogy? Is it too detailed? Is it too high level? Is it just about right? What are your thoughts in terms of this type of discussion for the POCD?
I think the village center is tremendously important. I think having a balance of open space and housing is our biggest hurdle in terms of development in the village center. So I think that it's worth being fairly prescriptive in the POCD, but leaving some options for discussion.
And so I think that's very helpful, Matt, because I think that could lead us in a direction that we could consider going with the principles and concepts more than the pictures. Or you may feel more comfortable with sort of generalized pictures rather than the principles, or a combination of the two, or kind of none at all. I put all of them together because I thought that they could complement each other, but I want to make sure I capture what the commission thinks is important and what the community feels is important for what I think is a tremendously important area.
I thought the presentation was excellent and very appropriate. I like both maps because I like describing the conceptual Riverwalk trails, which I think people should be focused on, and the other hill walk trails. I thought the map on page, I don't know, maybe it's 9.
Yep.
With, people have been talking about connecting Route 341 through that backfield for years. And I certainly think we should be at least saying that should be considered, if not recommended. I thought it was all extremely well done and struck the appropriate balance myself.
Thank you, Mark.
I also like the presentation, and I think that the maps, I think the visual part of it is very important.
Yep.
If somebody really is looking and reading this, the maps provide clarity to what the ideas are and concepts are.
I think what would make sense to do, I think at some point in the not too distant future, next couple of months, it makes sense for us to have a working meeting or a listening session or a public informational meeting where we kind of share some of the conversations we've had about the booklets and then get input on these ideas. And I think what we could do with regard to these is put them up as part of a PowerPoint or something else like that with a big draft on it and say to people, what do you think about this? Are there other ideas that you would like to add in? Or, you know, if we get through COVID, we even have a public meeting, people can put Post-it notes on a map or something like that. So I think we could use this to explore some different ideas and get people the opportunity to kind of give us feedback. So it's not really, it doesn't say plan on it anywhere, but I think given the across the concept of what we're trying to do here, could be kind of useful. The recommendations which are in here are on page 11 for the Village Center. I think in the conversation we did in the last book, the text, which is in black, is generally sort of a policy. And a policy is something which is ongoing. So we're always going to want to implement the Village Center principles and concepts. So we're always going to want to maintain and enhance the physical appearance. So these things don't really change over time. But then the red items here are action steps, like complete the streetscape improvement project. And then we can check that off the list, and then it comes out of the table type of thing, or recommendation for amending the zoning regulations to refer to the village principles and concepts. So that would be something that the commission could sponsor a regulation change for. And when that's done, we can kind of cross that off the list. So the intention here is that this could become a kind of a working plan that over time, that, even once or twice a year, the commission could pull out the POCD and say, what could we or should we focus on as part of the next budget, or what should we prod, the selectmen about, or kind of other situations like that. Some of these could be planning and zoning commission responsibilities. Are you okay with, go ahead, Mark.
On page 11.9 in the box.
Yep.
I've been very focused on these charging stations, in part because I recently bought a Tesla. And I also think that with Kent being sort of the gateway to the northern, Massachusetts and other towns, that it would be really important for Kent to get out in front of this and get those stations in, so that people become used to stopping in Kent to recharge their cars and have dinner, shop, whatever. I think it's be really important down the road when many, many, many cars are electrified. I don't understand why point 9, develop an approach to provide electric vehicles, is a planning and zoning, or at least exclusively planning and zoning. It seems to me it should also be the town, because what I would think would be most effective would be for the town to go to the shopping center owners. The best place to put those charging stations are in the parking lots of the shopping centers. There's room for them. That's where people, if they pull their cars in to recharge, that's where they'll walk around to go to the shops and go to the restaurants, rather than on Main Street. I don't see how those charging centers are going to be on Main Street in parking spaces. It seems to me the only logical and best place for them is in the shopping center lots. And that, it seems to me, would be a negotiation between the town and those property owners.
I agree. And I think I put some conversation into on page 10 in terms of the different types of chargers. And I think that we start to get into some key discussions with regard to, because, a type 1 charger is basically an overnight, and that's not going to help the village center much, because people are just going to camp out there and there's no turnover.
Nope.
You get to the other end of the spectrum, which is a level 3 charger, which has different vehicles have different connectors for a level 3 charger. And so this becomes sort of a little bit like carrying adapters for your iPhone or USB chargers. It's like, how are we going to manage this without a consistent standard? And so it might be a scenario that we might focus in on a level 2 charger, which can charge a vehicle in like 2 to 6 hours.
Right.
And that could be a wonderful linger time. But the
Correct.
question that I think ends up being is that if we have individual spaces spread around the village center, what we end up with is people trolling for an available space. But if we group them all together so that people know where to go and then make people walk, some people are going to benefit from the location and others would not. So there's some locational challenges here, which I kind of talk about here on the middle of page 10, which is we'll put them wherever we can and try to fill them out as time goes on, increase the number? Or do we try to group them in each of the 4 quadrants of the village center? It's bigger numbers in certain places so that, nobody's hindered, everybody benefits a little bit. Put them all in a central location, et cetera. And so these policy decisions are probably something that we should, I think, as you point out, Mark, get a jump on. Particularly since I think I shared through Donna the article about the states launching this big charging station push, and there's money out there. Right. And I think we could jump ahead of a lot of towns if we're able to jump on this. So I don't know. I mean, I think certainly the Planning and Zoning Commission can start the ball rolling here. I didn't mean to give them full responsibility as the leader partner. I think that was wrong, Mark. So nice catch there. But somehow to even take this page of this booklet and elevate it up and send it off to the Board of Selectmen and say, let's not miss this opportunity or something. That could be a way to proceed.
Yep.
Even before we finalize the POCD is what you're suggesting, Glenn?
I think that, POCD is meant to be a forward-looking document with a 10-year useful life. But we shouldn't have to wait to finish the plan to pick up and run with a good idea. And so if at this point in time, as a committee, we think this idea has merit and is worth pursuing now, what the committee could do is bring this forward to Planning and Zoning, and Planning and Zoning as the official entity, if you will, could forward this off to Board of Selectmen and say, and the article I sent from the Hartford Current, which is, okay, let's do this. I don't know who the right person is in town, but I think
we should do that, Glenn. Exactly what you said. It is a current conversation. It's a current conversation for the first selectman, and it's a current conversation for the town. We have 2 charging stations that don't work and need to be repaired or replaced, I think, at this point. So I think it's a perfect time to push this forward and not just wait for the POC to come for us to get finished with it, because that's going to take a while.
So I think this page here, I'm happy if the commission feels useful to even clean up this graphic, for example, and just put little, yellow P's for power stations for cars or EV icons or something like that. If you think that might help the overall conversation and discussion. So I think if you guys communicate through Donna, or I'll help in any way that I can. But I think my sense would be to take maybe a map like this text, which is on page 10, then for the Planning and Zoning Commission to forward that on to the Board of Selectmen with a recommendation that, let's do this now, I think could be huge.
I don't know if it would be included in this or just something that'll evolve as it happens, but if you'd want to include, going off what you were saying about having a couple of charging stations over here and a couple over there, and, in this shopping center, that shopping center, in our village information area, stuff like that. There should be signage so people can actually find these charging stations.
And I felt there are apps now available for smartphones that say, okay, charging stations, et cetera. So it's almost like Waze or Google Maps or something else like that. But there's no app that tells you whether or not it's in use. So having people trolling around and getting frustrated because they can't find a charging station is an element of sort of marketing Kent, which would bite us in the rear end. So the question, in a sense, I think that the distribution of these, having a plan, we're not going to be able to put in, 20 chargers right off the bat. But it might be the type of thing that our sequencing is, we're starting off here, and then from here, we're going, even town hall's a little far for the retailers to park at town hall and then walk back to the stores. People generally wouldn't do, they think that that was in kind of a little bit of an imposition. So could we start off 2 or 3 or 4 here and then move over and do another 2, 3 or 4? Because I think, in the wintertime, they're going to sit. We just don't get as many visitors. But in the summertime, I think we could find a situation that they're all in use. And if we don't actually charge for them after an hour or two, people are just going to park their cars there and then nobody's going to be able to use them either. So
Well,
we're going to have to figure that out.
just to give you some input on that, and I'm not suggesting we do this only for Teslas, but if you, on the Tesla map in the car, if there are Tesla designated superchargers on the map in your Tesla, it shows you where they are and it shows you how many are available real time. So when you're driving along, you can
Huge.
where the next closest Tesla supercharger is and are any of them empty so that you can pull in. So again, I don't know how you get on Tesla's maps. That's something for somebody to figure out. But to me, again, being the first mover here and getting people used to the fact that Kent is a center where you can get your car recharged is critical.
I agree. Perfect.
Would you consider these to be structures then, since they're permanently attached to the ground? And is that something that you would need to look at as far as zoning and setbacks and, all that kind of stuff? I think that's something that I look at, on the actual implementation aspect of this. Town is exempt from zoning, so any town-owned property, they can just put them, which leaves a couple of spaces at the visitor center there behind the pharmacy. But then where would the others go? And can we do something with our regs where we would waive the zoning requirement? Just say, structures are permanently, they don't include electric vehicle charging stations. But I think it's something that you need to think about in addition to doing that.
So I think,
They can tap into the fire department and see if the fire department would be willing to give up some of their gravel parking spaces. You know what I mean?
I think, Donna, we could write an exception to the dimensions table, which says the electric vehicle charging stations are considered accessory to any or all uses in the village center. You might even say KVOD area, whatever we decide to call it. And because of their unique and special nature, they are exempt from yard setbacks coverage and any other standard. We could either say, provided they're approved by the commission, or we could make it even easier and say, provided they're in a location approved by staff.
Right.
So we could craft an exception to the setback structure thing. Yeah, I agree, there are structures.
Right.
And I think we should carve out an exception to that.
Right.
So
I'm just
Yeah.
pointing it out that there's another step to getting the Board of Selectmen to buy into this, and the step is a planning and zoning step.
Yep, I'm gonna make a note of that. And maybe as we get perhaps feedback from the Board of Selectmen, or even try to get out in front on some of this charging, et cetera. I think it's a great, I noticed that the governor participated in the ribbon cutting at the Welcome Center at that time. I think in a community like Kent, to be seen as a leader in sustainability initiatives such as this would be a great photo op for the governor. So there's a lot of different ways that we could play this to our advantage. And I think we can craft a regulation to, exempt them from setbacks, et cetera.
Okay.
I don't think there's much more that I wanted to share with you in terms of the village center discussion. I think all of these booklets are meant to be for discussion purposes moving ahead. And if this is a reasonable first step in terms of the village center, I'm ready to move on to the next topic. Does that sound reasonable?
It's more than a reasonable first step, Glenn. There's a couple of things that I just want to bring up quickly. I don't know whether the development related strategies, whether the discussion regarding long and short-term elder care belongs here or it belongs someplace else.
I think it could be somewhere else, but keep going.
But I think that I think that we as a commission, we have it on our list to talk about. But I think that the POCD should, I think, encourage long and short term elder care, housing, in whichever zone we think that it's appropriate.
Perfect.
I also note that I'm sorry, Adam, that there's on page 3, we're referencing a lot of different documents that I went and looked for, and I actually found paper copies from when we redid the POCD. So I'm only suggesting that if we're referencing paper document, or if we're referencing documents in the POCD, that we have a way to access them.
Yeah.
Well, so just going off of what Matt said, are we going to, because today I think most people are going to look at this online and there will be fewer paper copies. Are we going to, as this comes to an end, and have hyperlinks added in this, so as you're looking through it, you could click on the transportation alternatives program grant, and it would take you right to it.
I think that that's an excellent way to do this. I think the document will use a PDF because it's so readily available for people. They've become familiar with it. And I can work with Donna to get these documents up on the town website, get a hyperlink for them, and then we can hyperlink the document to those. I think even back in the conservation and sustainability issues is that we don't have control over, EPA and where they put it, the document, but I think things within the town, we certainly can do that.
Great.
All right. So just quickly, and you guys interrupt me if I'm going down the wrong road. I think that as part of the recreation access, we should seriously consider again river access. Maybe a town beach on the river. Certainly points where the public can access, put in and take out points for boating.
I think I've got that elsewhere.
I think you do too. You do talk about further in, you talk about creating better access to the river in different ways.
I didn't do it here, Matt, because I just didn't think, looking at the river banks and the scenarios, that there were good places to get, river access or boating access and other things here. And I felt that further upstream, there, forget the name of the road. Looks like it was an old road that actually went over the Housatonic River. Maybe it's a continuation of
North
River
Kent
Road.
Road.
Yeah, North Kent.
North Kent,
Kent Road.
yes. Thank you very much. That might be an opportunity area for that. So I just didn't think the village center was the place to do that, but I think I have it elsewhere.
Great.
Could I- Matt,
go ahead,
also-
Mark.
Also on page 12 on recreation, I think it's a little bit controversial. It's not my view, but I thought a lot of the town was not really very happy with opening up recreational opportunities at like Bullsbridge and Kent Falls, that they were, they put up all kinds of barriers and people couldn't park there. They didn't really want people from other areas coming there and picnicking and making noise. And to me, it's just an issue. I'm not sure that we should be recommending it if that's not what a lot of town people want.
A good catch. Yeah.
I I know there were a lot of people that were against it, but I think there are a lot of people that are for it also. The people who were against it were very loud, and because their properties do get impacted by too many people coming up and not being able to park at these areas, and then they end up using their phones to find other places that are close to the river or to Kent Falls, and that impacts their properties. But I think there are lots of ways to deal with that. And I think that improving access to the river is an important thing. And I think it enhances our town, and it brings more people here to spend more time here and put their kayaks and their canoes in the water and come into town and have lunch and buy things. It supports our town. It is a real topic, Mark, that, like you said, in how people are invading other people's properties. And that's a big,
I'm in favor of it too, but maybe we should just caveat it to say, promote water-based recreational opportunities, provided it's done in a way that, is in keeping with the character of the town or something, just so that, the people who really oppose it will see that, we've taken their feelings into consideration.
okay.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think in my discussions with HVA, they have been doing quite a bit of work up and down the river in the summertime with a group of people that were trying to visit these locations, to observe behaviors, to try to guide cleanup, avoiding abuse of property and rights. So that I do think there's text that's back in that booklet that maybe we could also bring forward here, because I think what we're looking to do is share these resources responsibly within the town and with others, that, perhaps there are ways to find that right balance. So we made a jump there from the village center to the new heading here, which is about supporting business and economic development. I think there's a couple of things that go along with this. The first of which is the basic concept of business and economic development. We're very fortunate that we get the level of tourism activity we do. I mean, in terms of the level of economic activity relative to population, Kent does very well for a small community because of the tourism activities that happen here, the private schools, the cultural assets and resources. We actually only have two business areas, the sort of the village commercial town center area and then the Bullsbridge area. One of the concepts here I wanted to bring up for discussion was the concept of economic development support. The Chamber of Commerce is a group of businesses in town who work together to try to promote common efforts. They feel that they don't get a great deal of support from the town. And at times when they want to undertake activities, the town isn't always sort of helping and assisting. So they felt that there was a lack of communication. Now, I know that in the past that when working on the zoning regulations, Donna set up a meeting and I went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting and talked about it. So I know there's a communication that goes on. But I wondered if there were opportunities for the town to kind of get more involved with this. I didn't see that it would make any sense for the town to establish an economic development commission. That was actually recommended in your current plan. And I don't think there's enough work that could be done to create another committee that would meet, 12 times a year or however often they would meet and actually do anything. So I wondered if it made sense to find some way to perhaps support the efforts of the Chamber of Commerce, either designate an official liaison or provide funding each year, $500, $1,000, something, provide administrative support to them for some of their efforts, or work with the Northwest Hills COG or the Economic Development Agency in Northwest Connecticut to do these types of things, or whether this is also kind of a controversial effort. What do you guys think in terms of support for economic development in town?
I guess I had always seen the Economic Development Commission to be a sort of a town government adjunct to the Chamber of Commerce. So Chamber of Commerce is acting on the private side, and they need some liaison, as you said, Glenn, to the local government. Whether it's through the local government through COG, as you suggest here, or maybe the Connecticut Economic Development Commission, along with their economic development plan that you talk about further on a couple of pages ahead.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if actually, Matt, we actually sort of focus in, if you will, on the concept of liaison. And the liaison, how that unfolds, it could be a topic of conversation. What is that liaison and how might it evolve? Is it a committee? Is it a person? Is it, an agency, regional agency, et cetera? So maybe rather than list all of these bullets, we just sort of focus on the first one, or we could just leave all of these here for further discussion. What's the committee's thought on that?
I think the idea of having a town liaison to the Chamber of Commerce is a very good idea.
And maybe that's the town can delegate that responsibility to somebody at COG who is there and working all the time.
Yep. Perfect. The other issues on this page, I think the town does a pretty good job with home-based business regulations with the update of the zoning regulations. And I think that my understanding is that they've served the town well through COVID. So, and Kent is a community that includes home-based businesses. So I think it seems to be working well from what I've learned. Private schools, again, help our economy significantly. And so we should, look at ways to continue those efforts overall. We do have regional economic development activities going on, and I think those could complement our efforts locally. So overall, the strategies in this area are mostly policy oriented, continue to support these other activities, and then explore how to best support economic development in Kent. And that responsibility was assigned to the Board of Selectmen, and that includes the liaison idea. Good with that section?
Yes.
I think the next section I wanted to get into, discuss with the committee overall here is the specific zoning districts. We've already talked about Kent Town Center, but there's two other areas I think it's important for us to look at. One is the industrial area at Maple Street Extension. As you know, it's really between Maple Street Extension and the railroad line. The parcels are fairly shallow and long. There's a little bit of development potential here, but not a tremendous amount. There's a little bit here at the northern edge of the, I guess it's the Berkshire Transformer parcel. We do have the pie-shaped parcel, which is down at the intersection of Maple Street Extension, the rail line, et cetera. It's challenged because it's got two front yards on it. It's got the rail line going through it. So there's not a lot of useful area. And I expressed to Donna some of my concerns about that. Donna explains that people have talked to her about this parcel, and they've indicated that they have studied the feasibility of a building on that parcel. So I think the issue I wanted to raise for the commission here overall is that there really doesn't appear to be much opportunity to expand this zone out. On the eastern side, of Maple Street Extension, we have steep slopes next to the roadway. We've got Stewart Farms over here, and then we've got some single family houses. I guess my mouse is sort of disappearing here. Maybe I'll just zoom in here for a second.
You can see it.
Okay. So again, we've got the residential houses over by 341, steep slopes, Stewart Farms. So there's not much opportunity to go to the east. We got this purple area in here, which looks like it has some development potential. We've got the yellow site down here at the pie. And then Donna and I were trying to figure out what was going on at this parcel down at the other end. It was like an airplane wing, and what might happen with that. we believe from what we saw on the assessor's database that this parcel was assigned to the railroad. But if they ever decided that this was surplus to their needs, the parcel is shallow enough. It's almost a classic case of an opportunity to apply for a variance to a front yard for a building or something else, which is at kind of the gateway to the village center. So it's an area here, just I think with some sensitivity in terms of the narrowness of these parcels, and what could happen here in the future. I think the regulations overall are reasonable. I don't see much of an opportunity to expand without being particularly sort of visible in other areas. So I think more than anything else, these are things to be aware of and sensitive to, but I don't know if the commission wants to go any further. Any thoughts about the Maple Street Industrial Zone?
My only thought is that it's really an important area. It's the only area that's zoned industrial, which allows things to happen on it. And it's too bad that we can't expand it. There's nowhere for it to expand to, but we need to keep it industrial. And I think people will do something with it. That unbuilt parcel is just unbuilt because nobody's used it, but somebody owns it.
Yep.
So where is that, where is the blue parcel in the map above in relation to, is it to the east of the entrance to the Old Kent?
I think it is.
Yeah,
On this zoning map. Yeah, go ahead, Donna.
I think what you're looking at, that blue, is part of Birch Hill, where the town has the right of way to pass and repass in order to get to the transfer station.
Okay. Because the whole area then to the, if we continue east from that entrance road over to where the, the old liquor store and the healthcare facility was,
Yeah,
that's
George
all
Jetson.
undeveloped.
Yeah, that's going to be developed.
I was going to say that was just cleared.
Yeah.
The summer. There's something.
That DeBray's, Jason DeBray owns that.
So it doesn't make any sense to expand. I'm not sure I like the idea of expanding the industrial zone, industrial A, up the steep slope to the east of Maple Street Extension. But
Well, you would have to change that because that's rural.
Right.
yeah, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
so we're talking about, maybe extending it to the industrial zone up the hill, which I'm not really a big fan of. Can we extend it across the street and somewhat connect it to where we are with the town facility? And as another idea, could we just make the whole industrial 1A and give some more opportunity to have more intense industrial development over where the fire department is?
So the difference between the 1A and the 1B is that they're larger setbacks and lesser coverage in the 1B, which was acceptable to the town because that's the fire station and the public works garage. So that's the difference between the industrial A and the industrial B. I think that the industrial A does allow for some more significant industrial type uses in terms of storage and other activities like that. But the sites aren't particularly visible. You get a view of it as you're coming down 341 to South Kent Road. You can sort of look in there. You can see the school bus storage and some of the other buildings, et cetera. But you really don't get a glimpse, even in the wintertime, as you go further down, because you have the rail line embankment and it's overgrown, et cetera. So I think that this is somewhat shielded. If you jump 341, Matt, it's more likely to be visible. So this area, because it's zone business, could be used for business, office, and sort of even some light industrial activities. And the building, I believe that's in the Kent Village overlay. So there would be architectural review of that. So maybe it's okay the way it is in terms of business activities here with an architectural mind, And then the heavier industrial uses would be over here. I mean, the opportunity might exist to make this area industrial C, which could allow some other types of uses.
Yeah, I was mostly, I'm mostly, thinking about the same conversation we had, a decade ago, that the industrial zone is really small. And do we need to provide, from a planning standpoint, a bigger industrial, more property for industrial use? I know that in this case, we have to go all the way back to the gateway conversation that we were having in the beginning. This is one of the gateways in town. And I agree that we don't really want it to be terribly industrial as we come down the hill and into town across the flat. So it's just a thought that I'm having. And, but going further with that thought, does it make any sense to try to find some other area in town that's not in one of the gateways, maybe out of town a little bit, that we identify as industrial? I don't know. It's just throwing it
Yep.
out.
So let me do this. I've made notes here for myself as part of my research and investigation. I'm going to take another look about going east or west, or whether there's other areas that may have potential. And then I'll share that back with the committee as we go forward. I think the next site, I think, is a little tricky as well. This is the Bullsbridge business area. Let me get to the map here. So at this point in time, we think we have conflicting zoning maps that actually leave us wondering exactly what the zoning boundary is here. I took a zoning map and looked at the configuration of the boundaries and thought it was identifying the parcel which is north of Bullsbridge Road on Route 7, the parcel south of that, which, no, it's the second parcel down, which is the Bullsbridge Inn, I believe. Correct, Donna?
Yes,
Then we have the convenience store auto repair,
right.
but we think the zoning district goes quite far back. And so my thought here to share with the commission is that there might be some business activities which could be proposed in the back part of the property, which could have an impact on some of the adjacent residential areas. Did we want to leave this configuration the way it is, possibly consider cutting it off at the yellow boundary? How might we want to approach this area in terms of business zoning? And then I think the recommendation is also going to be, let's re-adopt the zoning map for this area so that we don't have conflicting maps, if you will. We have a clear indication of what we're thinking about. But what are your thoughts about the Bullsbridge Hamlet zone?
I think one of the things that we're gonna have to figure out is we've got a resident who bought the second lot in from Route 7 on the south side.
Yes,
And
I can see my mouse, but it's this narrow piece right here.
there was a little tiny house on there, and so she bought the bigger house, but the properties were sold together. And she came and said, can I put a business in there? And I looked at the map and I said, yeah, because as far as I can tell, that's the business hamlet. So that's where the confusion came from. So now I have someone who is putting in a lot of money and doing a lot of research to start a bakery in the business hamlet via a special permit. So it's like,
And where is that? On Bullsbridge or on 7?
on Bullsbridge, if you turn into Bullsbridge and you're heading towards the South Kent School, it's the
Yeah.
second lot.
Right after Greenbaum's property.
Yes.
That
Yep.
lot right after it.
Yep. So that little tiny cottage that was like 500 square feet
Yeah.
belonged to the house further closer to the west. And when
It should
she
back to number
purchased it,
7.
it was a combination deal. You had to buy both of them. And so now she's trying to put a business in there, because when I looked at the map, my interpretation was, yes, that was included in the business hamlet. So my recommendation is that we not do anything until she decides whether or not she's really gonna put that bakery in there after spending all this money.
And it's not a question of the small narrow lot being outside of the business district, the business hamlet, and the larger lot being in it, right? It's squarely within the boundary of what you believe is in the zone.
So this map, what you're looking at here on the screen right now, is that I looked at the zoning map, and all it really had for the business hamlet was a polygon, which was colored, which was roughly sort of the shape which you see here. So I brought it to look at the property lines from the assessor's maps and other information, and thought it was the first line. And Donna looked at it from doing the same thing and thought it was the second line. And so we do have this question. And then these are challenges for the commission, because as Donna points out, somebody's going to be spending thousands of dollars on trying to figure this out based on the map. So I do think it's going to make sense for the commission at some point in the future to get clarity, or to make it clear, here is the boundary. But I think there's two issues, perhaps, maybe more. But the first issue may be, maybe we wait on this topic to see what, if anything, happens on the bakery, because it's sensitive to change it in the middle of the process, because you look like you knew about the bakery, and so you changed the zone to prevent it, and that's probably not. So maybe we let that take its course. But then the second longer term issue would be whether or not the depth of these zones from Route 7 are okay, or whether we should truncate them in some way, shape, or form. Maybe that becomes sort of a second discussion at some time in the future. And so now, kind of thinking this through as we're talking about this, maybe the issue on all of these strategies is it at some time in the future, let's revisit the Bullsbridge delineation of the district.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because rumor has it that Greenbaum, who owns the corner of Bullsbridge and 7, is buying the little house behind the Bullsbridge Inn, and he's going to turn that into some kind of a commercial establishment.
That's squarely within the zone.
Right.
We think it is, Matt. As part of our work on the zoning regulations, I don't recall us having specific conversations about the extent of Bullsbridge. So I think that this area, this delineation probably goes back quite some ways, quite some time in terms of how it ended up this way. But, you know, it's quite possible sometime in the future, even though it looks like there's a pond about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way back on this property, something of a commercial nature proposed here in the back could have some fairly significant impacts. But I mean, I think maybe the issue is at some time in the future, let's revisit the Bullsbridge scenario. Does that
That's
sound
great.
fair?
Yeah. So, you know, I think that sort of boutique destination inn I think it's a great idea for down there. And I personally am not sure that we shouldn't discourage a fueling station. I mean, to me, a gas station there is better than the Patco in the middle of town.
It's not, I don't think it's a gas station anymore.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah, it's
not. But the note here, the note on page 18 is that it's not recommended auto repair gas stations be permitted in this zone. I'm not sure that's right. I'm not sure I'm right. I could be, you know, but I think it bears some further discussion.
Well,
I think it
don't
does
ever
as well.
remember that as being something that we didn't want there.
You do or do not, Adam?
I'm sorry.
Were you saying you do or do not?
I don't ever remember our recommendation was to not have a gas station or auto repair. I mean, when it's been there for a long time, and It seems
Yeah,
like a good place to have it.
And I think that this comment came up because I looked at the zoning regulations. And it didn't appear to me in the business hamlet that the auto repair gas station was permitted. So as a result, it's there as a pre-existing nonconformity, which is subject to some restrictions and limitations. So if the commission says, you know what, we think that actually is a good location for this in the future, then we might want to change the BH regulations to add it in so that they can manage it. Because once it's non-conforming, they're kind of stuck with what they've got, even though they may want to make improvements and new tanks in the ground and sort of all of the other stuff. And the issue is, no, that's going to be a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I mean, that curve right there isn't great, coming around the corner.
The building that Stan Greenbaum owns, that's right on the corner of 7 and Bullsbridge Road, which now is all residential, but that used to be mixed. It used to be a store, the Riverstone in the bottom of it, and there was residential above it. And then you had the Bullsbridge Inn right next to that. Then you had the gas station and convenience store right next to that. A lot of people go fishing down there and hiking down there, and I think it's a very convenient place to have those things. We have this little business district, and I don't know why we would ever want to discourage that.
And this is a great discussion because I think what I'm going to do is sort of perhaps look at modifying the text here. And I think what the commission, I feel you're expressing is an interest in taking another look at this area. Whether that means to add more uses, subtract some uses, change the boundaries, et cetera. But the issue is we've only got kind of 3 business areas in town. We got the town center, the industrial zone, and this. So if there was a way to make effective use of this because of its location, et cetera, that's something that we could look at. And I think that's a great recommendation for the POCD.
Sorry, I had to open the damper down here so a little more heat came in.
There you go. Well,
You
I
got
think
yours.
we're almost done with this booklet. So I think the next section of this booklet is about guiding residential development. I think, our overall goal is to sort of continue the zoning structure that we've had in town with the various districts, the R1, R2, the VRs, et cetera. I think the overall sense of town is, again, higher density in the village area. We created the RU2 for the Birch Hill area. Sorry about that. And soil-based zoning applies in the outlying areas. So I think the basic residential structure is set for much of town. I didn't see any changes that were going to be necessary here. We modified the conservation development approach. We allow some multifamily developments and have some in and near the town center areas. Accessory dwelling units and guest houses Kent has allowed those for some time. So I think the basic zoning structure, works. Matt raised the issue earlier in our conversation here tonight about long-term elder care. And there's also a companion element that goes with this, tied into the discussion of residential development, because as you know, Kent and all towns in Connecticut are working on this concept of an affordable housing plan, which needs to be adopted by June. And so I think I've discussed with Donna and with Jocelyn in terms of that effort. And right now, there's simply 2 pages in here acknowledging that work is going on and looking to incorporate some of the information and recommendations that they come up with, because I imagine that they will be adopted before we are. So I think, go ahead.
Isn't there also a P&Z subcommittee on affordable housing? Isn't there?
Yes, there is.
That's the same thing, Mark. There's a couple of members, and as we said earlier, David and Alice are on that committee as members of the POCD, representatives of planning and zoning on that housing committee.
But it's not a planning and zoning committee. It's a town committee. that we.
Yes, it's a committee to write the housing
Housing
plan
plan.
for Kent.
I thought Adam and somebody else on P and Z were charged with someday coming up with new regs on affordable housing. Maybe I'm just,
Wes and I are charged with reviewing the subdivision regulations.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Never mind. Subdivision. Okay.
When did that happen?
Before COVID, and we've been putting it off since COVID until we could all meet together.
That's right.
It's been long enough that we've actually let it fall off of the
It's off the
agenda.
agenda, right?
for a period of time.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it is. You had decided, you know what, we're not going to be able to get together for a while, so just take it off the agenda. So,
I don't
Oh,
know
you
when
can put
we
it in
are
the
going to
POC,
be.
there you go.
But I mean, it's back on. I think it's in the capital plan now, because we've got money in the capital plan to rewrite the subdivision regulations, or at least that's proposed.
Yeah, to rewrite the regs.
They're old. The subdivision regulations.
That's right. That's right.
They need us to look at.
So one other comment that I would have, Glenn, is simply that where we reference the village center,
Yeah,
I think that we should call it the village instead, because for me, the village is really the village overlay district, the village center overlay district. And I don't want to get confused with what that is. And so the overlay district is really the village commercial and the village residential 1 and the village residential 2, and does not include, I don't think, the industrial.
so that's very helpful, Matt, because I want to make sure I'm using the right terminology. And I thought the approach from what things I was reading talked about the village center, and that's what I tried to gravitate toward. So what would be the right terminology? The village?
I think so, because the zone is the village center commercial, right? That's what we call it.
Yeah.
And then we don't call it the village center residential 1, right? Or the village center residential 2. We just call it the village residential 1.
Just call it
Yeah.
the village residential 1.
And I think the village, as we talk about it, I don't want to confuse the village center commercial with the village center.
So my sense of the hierarchy here could be village center is sort of a generic and general area. I mean, we could argue, does it cross the river or not? Or, is it stop at the bridge? What, is the school in, et cetera? But my thought was that the components of the village center are the VR1, Village Residential 1, the VR2, also the village business area. Then we have the Kent Village Overlay District, which actually sort of continues up and picks up some of the other areas. So Village Center included below it many other zoning districts and areas. But if Village Center isn't working, I'll have to figure out a different terminology to make that work.
The village center overlay district, if I'm correct, includes the village center commercial, the VR1 and the VR2.
And industrial.
It does include the industrial. Okay.
Yeah, the industrial has their own separate uses in addition to the uses that are allowed in the commercial district. So I would think then that the village center, the architecture review board would look at areas over there as well.
So Donna, would you say that what we're talking about here, that's what we're calling in this document the village center, is synonymous with the village center overlay district?
Yes, I would. Because the village center overlay district also applies to VR1 and VR2. And to me, that encompasses the entire village center.
So I was, as part of my work on preparing this, I created this map called Village Center overall. And the basic concept I was trying to get to is that there are areas which are outside the village core, which feel like they're part of the village center. So it's not just the KVOD, but it's also areas adjacent and to. So I do think, I appreciate you bringing this up, Matt, because I think what we need to do at some place is sort of describe our terminology and say, okay, look, these are the different components to it. So let me put some thought into that. I think,
Maybe we should be calling it the village core, like what you have. You
so
know,
the
we-
parcel on Johnson Road back here, what is that? Is that part of the village center?
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Karen,
that's
what do you
what-
think about this, about the defining the limits of the the village center?
What do I think about it?
Yeah, where would you delineate the center of the village?
I think pretty much where Glenn has it circled in red. I don't see it as going any farther north. That really becomes residential. He's got it scooped in, so it takes in Elizabeth Street and Meadow Street, and I think pretty much where Glenn has it would be my opinion.
Okay.
Isn't that Johnson Road parcel VR2? It's not VR1, right?
It's VR1.
Yeah, I think it's one.
from what, the map I'm looking back here on page 21, bear with me just for a moment. I'll take us there.
Yeah, that's what I think. That it goes all the way up to VR. It goes all the way up to the VR2.
Okay,
So this is VR1 here.
that's VR1.
Yeah,
and
and
this
then
is
that's
VR2. So
VR2.
this,
Yep.
yeah, the Johnson Road parcel, according to this, is VR1.
Right.
The issue with the Johnson Road is two things: the access to it, that parcel, and also there's a portion of it, I don't know if it's half, but there's a whole portion of it that's in the floodplain.
Yeah.
That's all KC property, which is how I know. And the other thing, since we're talking about it, just a point of interest, on the access way, creating another access way from the Kent Green area to Route 341. One of the reasons why that wasn't done was because folks felt that we wanted people to go into the village, and businesses on Main Street and in the back there in the green and stuff like that wanted people to come that way because it sort of forces them to be, to notice the town commercial district, the businesses. And also that field, which is also Casey owned, that 8 acres, it is, as we all know, you guys know, it is wet. It does have seasonal wetness in the center of it. But the more important reason why that wasn't linked to 341 is because you have to get permission to cross the railroad. And I don't know, Donna would know. I don't know what that entails.
There's no railroad there. You come out onto Maple Street Extension in front, behind the railroad. So that
You'd come out onto Maple Street itself.
extension, exactly. Onto
Yeah.
Maple Street Extension, not Maple Street. And actually, I walked that property with a soil scientist, and we looked at the southern portion that's close to Maple Street Extension, because everybody kept saying that's like a quagmire, and the soils came up dry, and then there's no wetlands. That all that's in there is just that kind of aqueduct that runs through to the pond on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
When
So,
we did when we did the incentive housing
Housing
overlay district, we looked at drainage, and we did
Right.
come up with, the engineers came up with a way to drain, because there is a time of year when it's wet back there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't wetlands, and there was a way to control that.
And I think the finding was it needs to be controlled, because if it's just, as Karen points out, it's poorly drained, or let me back, it's not well drained. So
Yes.
as a result, we've got water coming off the hillside that accumulates in the field, does not drain quickly. So a ditch or a drainage system, I think at one point in time, we had illustrated sort of a sinuous, waterway with pools or something like that would provide an opportunity to tame the water to get it out of here so that development could occur with drainage in place. So it's, there was we found historic USGS maps that showed a water feature back here in the field, because until the aqueduct was put in, the water would just drain off the hillside across and pond here. So that was part of the issue.
I will say, I don't know, the idea that we want to connect the Kent Green commercial area to 341, which may or may not be a great idea. And I do have the concerns that diverts some traffic from our main street, but it also, when you do it on Maple Street Extension like that, it is not seamless. It's a whole lot easier to just go down to Route 7, go down and turn into the green up on top where you do now. Maple Street Extension, when you can't make that turn there on the right, you have to go in from the other end, or to, if you're coming from the east, and Maple Street Extension is not at the other end of it, where it gets to 341 is not just an easy road. It's narrow and curvy.
I think the challenge from a retailing perspective, and retailing is not really about retail uses and so on, but it's the concept of sort of marketing and public behavior and trying to attract people in to the village center area, is that right now, most people think that the activity area that they want to be associated with is really from the train tracks down to 341. So the concept of getting up to Kent Green to get into the back feels like it's out of the way and it's a cul-de-sac. So actually, buildings in the back suffer because there's not another way in. So if there was some way to create a bit of not a grid, but some sort of connection, I think if there was some way to get to 341, even through Kent Barnes, if there was some way for a joint agreement or understanding or whatever, that now allows people to circulate. And as we were talking about earlier, even in terms of electric vehicle charging stations, if everything was at the end of a cul-de-sac, the driver would get pretty frustrated pretty quickly, pulling back out, pulling back in, going down, in, out, in, out. It's crazy. That if there was some way to actually interconnect these, so it became, and I'm not talking roads, interconnected parking lots that look and feel like you would connect to each other, it could actually enhance the economic and retail opportunities of all of the sites on it. And it wouldn't hurt Route 7 because that's going to get the major traffic flow, but it's going to create, some additional connections here. And there's no doubt, as Donna points out, that, or Adam perhaps, I think it was, the getting across the rail line, or maybe it's Karen, the getting across the rail tracks is a bit of an impediment because there's a little bit of a grade change that if we're ever going to do it, doing it before they actually bring passenger service back is going to be important, because right now it's occasional use for freight. So now is the time to get this into the plan and try to move this forward, because once passenger rail starts and they're trying to meet schedules and all the other stuff, it might be something a little bit more difficult to do. So even worst case scenario, if we were able to take the drive by the library into the back, which already goes over the rail tracks, and continue that back in some way, shape, or form back here, that's a help, because it's roughly maybe 2/3 of the distance to Kent Green Boulevard. Or if there was something down where the green is, that the little undeveloped parcel, I think it's a Casey parcel as well. If there's some way even there to kind of get over and get back, I think it could be important as a way to open up other sites to benefit it. So just food for thought.
Well, I think we're just about to lose Mark, right?
Yes.
So my thought was going to be, I think this is a good break point. I think that booklet 7, if the committee wants to, I have a Kent date on my calendar for February 17th, I believe is the day. Is that a regular meeting night of the commission, Donna?
No, the 10th is.
So if you'd like to do a break point here tonight, because the next booklet gets into community facilities, pedestrian vehicular transportation, utility infrastructure. There's enough going on with that I think we could either push forward tonight or just, I think it could be an hour to an hour and a half discussion then as well. And then I think we're good to go. What's the committee's pleasure?
I'm not going to be available on the 17th. I'm having a surgical procedure that day. So I'm not going to be around that night.
Okay, then
So,
let's find another day.
okay.
I think you're an important part of the conversation. Why don't I work with Donna on some date possibilities, either a doodle poll or whatever? And then we'll pick up then and everybody, Matt will be back to,
I'll be back to my normal ebullient self.
okay, let's not get carried away with this, okay?
So
So
I'll send out a doodle poll for before the 17th. And then the following week, maybe?
Well, I'm taking some time off the end of February, beginning of March, Donna, so there may be kind of a window that we've got here.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what, let me get my dates together. Are you in tomorrow?
I am.
Okay. Why don't you and I chat in the morning?
Okay.
Perfect. Everybody, thank you very much for the great
I just-
conversation here tonight, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay, I need a couple of motions. I need a motion to table the review of book 17 to the next scheduled meeting.
Book
Moved,
7, book 7.
Book 7, yep, sorry.
moved.
Second,
And a
Adam.
second.
And
Okay,
who
all in
seconded?
favor? Mark did.
Mark.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Karen, you want to keep going? All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
That's all four of us. Motion carries. And the second motion, Donna?
And then I guess, I'm just gonna say that, for the scheduling of the next meeting, we're just gonna do a doodle poll and that will be chosen at another time. Okay? We
and
don't need a
Matt,
motion for that.
Matt and Donna.
Yeah.
Good luck with the
Oh.
surgery.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, the next time, to when you see, yeah, thank you, Mark. All
Take good care.
All right, thank
right,
you all.
motion to adjourn.
Who's moving? Adam and Mark.
Adam moved.
Okay.
All right, great. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you
Nice
Thanks.
much.
work.
Nice to see you again, Matt.
All
Good
right,
night.
be good.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Donna.
Good luck, Matt.
Thanks.